Alright, so a lot of people have been making this mistake recently, and I can't really blame them since I've seen really well-known and established critics make the same mistake. But I want to make this clear. Okay, so you, right now, watching this video, what do you think that character development means? Think of an answer right now, I'll give you a sec. If your answer was when a character grows and changes due to the events in a story, or anything along those lines, you are absolutely horribly wrong. That is not what character development is. What you're thinking of is character growth. Character development and character growth are not the same thing. Say it with me, people. Character development and character growth, not the same thing. And once again, I don't blame you for making this mistake, since practically everyone makes it. The term makes it sound like it's the character that is developing as a person. But that's not what it is. It's not the character that's developing, it's the audience's perception of the character that's developing. All that character development is can be defined like this: the process through which the audience learns more about the character. That's all it is. It's a pretty broad definition. It can mean backstory, it can mean learning more about a character's day-to-day life, how they'd react to certain situations, the different sides of them, insights to their psychology, everything. But what it isn't is when a character changes as a person. That is character growth. They're both important, but they are two separate things. You may be wondering why I seem to think that the difference between these two is such a big deal. But it's not just the definition where there's a big difference, it's also the purpose and function of these two story processes. They may be similar sounding, yes, but when it comes to why they exist, there's a massive gap between them. Both set out to accomplish entirely different goals, or at least function differently in their attempt to reach the same goal. But before I get into what those goals usually are, as well as how they function differently, I want to make one thing clear. Storytelling is a super dynamic medium, meaning that when I say that something's purpose is usually something, that doesn't mean it doesn't have the potential to be something else. You can probably think of different uses for character development and growth than the main reasons I'm about to explain, and hey, more power to you. These are just the more common, simple ways that they are used. Okay, so what does character development set out to accomplish? Well, character development is usually there to make a character feel three-dimensional, to give them depth, texture, complexity, personality, and make them feel like people rather than robots. If you've ever watched something where a character simply has a single emotion that's heightened beyond belief and felt an inability to connect with them, then that character is poorly developed, or at least needed more development than they got. I'm about to condense a really broad topic, so forgive me for paraphrasing. But the only reason that we care about stories is because we care about the characters in them. And the only reason that we care about the characters is because we empathize with them. We see them as a reflection of ourselves, and even if we don't, then we see them as human beings with human problems and human needs and human desires, and we understand them. But if we know absolutely nothing about our characters' more complex aspects, if we don't understand them or feel like we've gotten to know them, then we have little reason to care. Character development allows you to get to know a character, allows you to become acquainted with deeper aspects about them so that they feel real. It's essential to caring about them. Character growth, on the other hand, is oftentimes a lot less about empathizing with the character and a lot more about the theme that the overarching story is conveying. It's hard to describe how it functions, so I'll just explain how it's normally used. As a part of the story, a character grows because the story happened, and because they grow, the story continues to happen. Or, in more complex terms, a character grows because of an event in the story, and because of that character's growth, they become a different person who makes different choices that lead to a different story. This also serves the narrative propulsion. Character growth also sometimes serves the audience's ability to empathize with a character. After all, when creating characters, building them with realistic human flaws is an important part of making them feel real. And of course, you don't always have to do this, but exploring these flaws, having the character realize they exist and or come to terms with them, and using their conquering of their flaws as a subplot or the catharsis of a subplot that facilitates the theme, are all really fun ways to make sure your characters connect to the plot rather than simply participating in it. If that sounded too complex for you, that's fine. If you're just starting out and don't know a lot about how stories function, think of character growth as another way to make a character feel realistic and therefore easier to empathize with. In real life, people change. People change all the time. In fact, people change every time they take in information or make a decision, though only slightly. So it only makes sense that characters would go through changes too. If a character experiences a long, harrowing, life-threatening journey in which many aspects of their psychology are challenged, then it might come off as a little weird and immersion breaking if the character is the exact same person at the end. Sometimes it just makes sense for a character to be different, and it's usually pretty satisfying. However, the real important difference is that character growth doesn't always need to happen if you're going to flesh out a character. If a character doesn't grow or change, that doesn't mean they're a bad character. You can make a character work on the strength of their character development alone. Look at Eren Yeager in the first half of Attack on Titan. Look at Forrest Gump. Look at the main character from Nightcrawler, I forgot his name. It is not characters that need stories, it is stories that need stories. Remember, character development is the audience's changing perception of a character. So, if executed correctly, instead of having a character arc where the character changes, you could have an arc where the audience's perception of the character is what changes. It's hard. Writing characters who change is probably a lot easier. But carrying a character, even a main character, with your development alone is wholly possible. If a character doesn't grow or change, that does not automatically make it a flaw. As long as you do your homework and really make sure that your development is interesting, it can totally work. This whole character development thing is a mistake that results from a lot of people just using generalizations about what makes a good story and what's wrong with a certain story in particular, which is another topic for a whole nother video. But yeah, consider yourself much more informed about the concept of character development and character growth. And please, spread this knowledge wherever you go. It's okay if you didn't know, but I think we can all agree it's at least mildly annoying when someone argues about something they don't know the slightest thing about. Thanks for watching. Later. Okay, let me add a bit of an addendum on here. I realized that I didn't make this point while I was editing, so let me clear things up. I realize that there is no official, accepted by everyone definition of character development and growth. What I'm trying to say here is that these two things, regardless of what we call them, should not be treated as the same thing, as they're actually quite different, and treating them as so is only going to cause more confusion.